Ending homelessness in the U.S. by 2020 will require us to make significant improvements in the way our homelessness systems function. The department has developed a set of 7 system-level measures to help communities understand their system's performance. This video features measure 4 of the 7 and explains why the measure is important, how it's calculated, and how you might consider using this measure locally. In this measure, we're looking at employment income and other sources of cash income. We know that most homeless projects primarily focus on housing placement, but we're also interested in whether people increase their income during the time in the homeless system. When your system is able to help people maximize their income, then they're better able to stay in their housing. This measure uses HMIS data on adults or heads of households' income when they enter projects, compared to their income at annual assessments or when they exit. It's a little different than some of the other measures, because tracking income is only required for projects funded through the CoC program. So only CoC program-funded permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and transitional housing projects are included in this measure. So let's be clear about what we mean when we talk about income. Bob here gets SSDI and has a small part-time job, and he also gets SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So the money from his job and his SSDI both go into his bank account. So we consider those 2 sources to be cash income. His job represents his employment income, and his SSDI is his non-employment cash income. Since the SNAP benefit is restricted to a specific use and doesn't hit Bob's bank account, we consider it a non-cash benefit and don't include it in the measure because, again, we're just looking at cash income. We know that this measure doesn't capture everything, but maximizing cash income is an important goal of CoC program-funded projects. So, to measure this goal, we're going to look at positive income changes in 2 different ways. One is changes during the reporting period for stayers, and then changes from project entry to exit for system leavers. I'll just note here that the measure looks solely at increases, so we don't learn about people who have maintained or decreased their income. Let's start by looking at a few examples of people who are in the homeless service system during the reporting period. We're going to tackle this in 2 snapshots, one of stayers and then one of leavers. So Brandon enters PSH in July with unemployment income. He gets a good case manager who helps him get SSDI, and he stabilizes in his PSH and stays there. So that means he's a stayer who's had at least 1 annual assessment. You'll want to look at the changes to his income during the reporting period. And you'll do this by comparing his most recent income assessment with his previous income assessment, looking at employment income and non-employment cash income separately. So in this case, he doesn't have an increase in employment income, but he does have an increase in the non-employment income. And we also have a 3rd category where we track increases in either type, so he would get counted there as well. Now let's add some more people who are all in homeless projects and were still there at the end of the reporting period, so they're stayers. The other 4 people here were all in PSH and remained there, and all had been there long enough to have an annual assessment. Some have had increases in employment income, others have had increases in non-employment income, and some don't show an increase in either category. When we total up all the stayers, we see that 1 of them has an employment income increase and 2 had a non-employment increase. So then when we look at the either income source, a total of 3 have had an increase. For this measure, we don't know what happened to the others. They could have maintained or decreased their income, but we note both situations simply as a dash here. Now let's look at system leavers. So Barbara enters transitional housing in June with no income. She gets a case manager who helps her get on SSDI, and she uses that SSDI income plus some income that she gets from a part-time job to move into affordable housing in the community after 2 months. Barbara is then a system leaver, so for her, we'll be looking at the change in income from project entry to exit. She has an employment income increase and a non-employment increase. We'll also note that she had an overall income increase here in the either column. Now let's add more people who are all in homeless projects and exited during the reporting period. Again, these are leavers. So Bob was in an emergency shelter, but he is not included because remember that this measure applies to CoC program-funded projects only. The other 3 people were in PSH and exited during the reporting period. Just like the stayers, some have had increases in employment income and others have had increases in non-employment income, with some showing an increase in neither category. Both parts of the measure exclude people who are still in a project at the end of the year but haven't been there for a whole year. For example, let's say that Bud moved into a PSH project just a few months before the reporting period ended, and he stayed there. But he hasn't had an annual assessment yet, so we'll wait to measure the change in his income until he's left the system completely or has stabilized in the project for at least a year. That means that next year he'll be captured whether he stays or exits. Okay, so now we'll total these leavers. There are a total of 3 people here who meet the criteria of a leaver. 1, Barbara, has had an employment income increase and also had a non-employment income increase. When we look at the results for the other clients on our list, we see that none of the other leavers had an increase in either employment or non-employment income. So only Barbara's increases are counted. When we look at all of the CoC program-funded projects, we can use this measure to get a picture of how your system is doing to help clients gain income. Once you understand the system-wide rate, you may want to dive deeper into your HMIS data to understand how different project types drive progress on this measure. Again, this is not an analysis that HUD requires, but it may help you identify opportunities for system planning. You may see that in some project types, there's more opportunity for clients to go from no income or temporary sources of a little income to greater income, whether it's from a job or from cash benefits like SSI or SSDI. You may even learn as much from what income sources clients are not accessing as those they are. And if you find underutilized cash benefits, it could be an opportunity for your CoC to do some training on how to improve access. In some project types where clients are likely to stay for a long time, PSH for example, you're likely going to see newer clients increasing their income while the longer-term clients have more stable income. As your retention rates in PSH increase, you're probably going to see fewer and fewer clients with income increases, which is fine and makes sense. So at a local level, you may want to set different local targets for different project types, depending on the expected outcomes of the project. It's also important to remember that this measure is limited as a picture of system-wide income increases. Because it's limited to only CoC program-funded projects, it's going to be a narrower view of those increases. But the project types covered, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and transitional housing grants, are all project types where it's very important that providers help clients work on increasing their income. So that was Measure 4, income and employment growth. Next up is Measure 5, number of people who become homeless for the first time.